Give it up for Max, please.
Animations, films, and video games all start in a similar place. It all starts with the concept artist developing ideas, characters, and environments. I was interested in this process, so I decided to specifically focus on environment concept art for my explorations project. I'm Max, and this is going to be everything I learned during this process. So I started breaking down environment concept art into 5 key stages. We started with the sketch, photos, editing, painting over the edit, and then effects. Mainly, I had to learn clipping masks, layer modes, blending options, and everything in Photoshop that involved a lot of editing. So I started with sketches. There was 2 ways I started sketching. One was with markers on the left, and then the others were with graphite, just simple on the right. I found the markers really fun because everything kind of happens by accident, and you just kind of work with what you have. And to add detail, I used white ballpoint pen over the black to add highlights. So my first piece, I liked my Snail City concept idea. Thought it was unique. So I started finding pictures and developing this idea further. I call it the traveling city. So these photos, most of them I all used in my final product. And you can see how this works. So I start by taking a photo and editing it, then adding more and more to it. And only on this 4th photo do I actually start painting. And then I continue painting and adding more photos on top until I get to my final product. And this is what it turned out. I used a lot of different brushes on this piece. I never actually downloaded brushes in Photoshop before. I always just used the standard given, and I found it really useful. You got cloud brushes, like the birds I didn't have to draw individually, you just get a brush for that, and yeah. The next piece, I thought this piece lacked some perspective, so I wanted to make it more dramatic, and the inspiration came from this top left sketch. For this perspective piece, I needed to use a grid because it would be pretty complicated. I used the polygon tool, set it to a star, had just lines protruding from one point, and I had 2 points below and 1 point on top, making it a 3-point perspective. And then I can follow those lines to make it very easy to sketch out my idea. So in this process, very similar to my last one, I start by adding photos and manipulating them, and I continue to add photos and paint over until I reach my final product. So this is my final product for my second piece. The 3 things that I learned were clipping masks, adjustment layers, and blending modes. So first, clipping masks. On the bottom, you can see everything that's black is hidden from a photo. So for example, this storefront was from a picture, but I only want the storefront, so I have to hide everything else. And by using clipping masks, you work in a non-destructive way, which means you can always bring back something from the photo, so you're not actually erasing anything. Same thing with adjustment layers. You never actually take away anything from the image. You can always come back and change it. So mostly I use curves, where I can adjust the darkness and lightness of each photo. And then lastly, blending modes. I use multiply the most, overlay, and color dodge. Especially for this piece, color dodge is important because you have a lot of artificial light. And then in order to learn these Photoshop skills, before I started painting, I went through some quick photo manipulation pieces. And in these photos, there's only maybe 4 photos I'm combining. For example, I have the light bulb, the sea, the fishes, and then the water. And you just have to manipulate them together. Overall, I learned that happy accidents are good, and a lot of the stuff or the ideas you make just come from doodling and making mistakes. Improvements, I want to get faster at editing in Photoshop, use more keyboard shortcuts, And for the future, I want to try doing simple animations. For example, in my environments, I could have the birds flying. Thank you.
How long did each of the pieces take you?
I know the second one for sure took me about 10 hours, and I spent one day just grinding it out. And I actually enjoy the process a lot, so I'll get like obsessed with it and just keep going. It's an unhealthy amount of them. Phil.
Not a question, but I think that's one of the coolest things I've seen in freestyle.
Yeah. Were there any specific pieces of media that inspired you for either of the two pieces?
I think concept art is just like, I play a lot of video games, so that's one. You can a lot of concept art for that, and overall, I think I was just impressed by how fast concept artists can make stuff. And at first, I thought they were just drawing everything, and then I learned, oh, they're just adding photos on top, and then painting, and then adding more photos. Yeah, and I think overall, just like in my pieces, I use like 40 plus photos. So I think that just shows like it's less drawing and more manipulating photos and then drawing on top.
For your city, I know you originally started without doing perspective. When you added the perspective in, how did that change how you added your photos in?
That made a big difference because normally you have to find, so the photos won't be to your perspective, so you have to use the perspective or transform features in Photoshop and line up your lines that it makes sense. If that makes sense.
I'm just kind of curious, what are the uses of like this type of concept art?
So yeah, so I said like animation films and video games. I don't really know about video games, but so a concept artist will just make a ton of ideas, and then like an art director will get, or sometimes the art director will come and say, I want this type of environment, draw me some sketches, or show me maybe how this possible game could look like. Thank you.
So in the second one that you did, the second talent you did, there was like a lot of neon lights. Was that?
There was neon already in it, and then I could also just use color dodge and add more light where I thought was needed.
Was there like a train of thought that led you to like Scale City, or how did you just come up with that idea?
Yeah, so I think in the top right sketch, there was a fish with a house on it. I saw this image somewhere and remembered it. So then I thought about maybe like a crab and a city on top, and I came to Snail and a city on top.